जितेंद्र सर नमस्ते। अ, आप सभी का स्वागत है। हम लोग आज प्रोफेसर कांचा इलैया के साथ बातचीत कर रहे हैं और प्रोफेसर साहब तक हमारे एक साथी पहुँचे हैं, तो थोड़ी देर में जुड़ते हैं वो। तो फिर हम आगे बातचीत शुरू करते हैं। और निहारिका, अगर आप हैं तो प्लीज़, इनवाइट मैंने आपको भेज दिया है, आप प्लीज़ ऊपर आइए। मंगेश, आप हैं?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
तो एक्चुअली में जिनसे बात हुई थी वो प्रोफेसर साहब के घर जा चुके हैं और प्रोबेबली 2-1 मिनट में सारा सिस्टम ऑन करते हैं। तो रूम रीसेट कर लेते हैं एक बार, फिर थोड़ा बातचीत आगे बढ़ाते हैं। हम क्या कर रहे हैं, क्यों कर रहे हैं, इस पर थोड़ा सा बात कर लेते हैं, फिर आगे।
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible. This is this series which we have started. Why Ambedkar is too hard to handle. And in this series, we have talked with so many eminent personalities on the clubhouse. And today's our guest is Professor Kancha Ilaiah. And we try to see, or we try to hear from the horse's mouth the experts who are from the mid-right movements, and we try to see, we have some questions as well from the listeners which we have already taken, so we are going to ask these questions as well today to Kancha sir, and hopefully he will be arrive shortly here, and then we can proceed further. So basically, first, the flow will be something like that. We will allow professor to talk about the topic first, and then after that, we will take the questions which are already with us, which we have taken earlier in the earlier sessions. And if some people have some questions, you can please write those questions in the chat, or you can back channel us so that we can, ask this question to professor. Thank you. Hi, Niharika. Welcome.
Hello, Mangesh ji. Hi.
Yes, Shrikar, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, Manish or Mangesh, anyone. Please ask Professor Sir about EWS reservation and his response towards that.
Sure, Shrikar, if you don't mind, can you please write your question in the chat box, or kindly back channel us so that we can consider that question as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, sure, Mangesh, I'll do that.
Uh, Also request you, Sikar, please, if your question is done, then I request you to please move yourself to the audience so that we can. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. So Professor's account is being set up right now. Um, he he will be here in a while. Please be patient. Professor, please come up. We've sent you an invite.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, Professor, we can hear you.
Yeah. Uh, is somebody introducing?
Greetings, Professor. Can you hear us?
Yes, yes. I can hear you.
Yes, Professor. Manish
So,
ji, would you like to take over?
Uh, I would request you, Niharika, to please introduce, and then we will continue with the session.
Absolutely. So we're very honored to have Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shepherd with us today on to speak with us. Before anything else, major apologies to Professor for all the trouble that we've put you through. Even though the difficulty is a very technical, a lot of time has been spent in trying to get you on this app, and we're extremely sorry about it. But we're very, very glad that you're finally here with us, and we get to hear from you. We can't wait to listen from you. I am pretty sure anyone who has come into this room is not familiar with Professor, because we this is a long-awaited session. We've been waiting for you for quite a while, and a lot of people in the speaker panel or in the listeners can't wait to hear you. So anyway, for the sake of the custom and formality, I will introduce Professor, although there's no need. But Professor is a political theorist and a social activist. He fights for the rights. He writes and fights for the rights of the marginalized. We're very honored to have him here. He has books written in the titles of his books are Why I Am Not a Hindu, uh, Samajika Smugglerlu, The Shudra, Vision for a New Path, Post-Hindu India, Buffalo Nationalism, God as Political Philosophers are amongst one of the most famous political writings the country has ever seen and read, and all written by Kancha Ilaiah garu. Professor, we're very happy to have you here.
okay. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I'm also really sorry for such a troublesome entry into the club, because I never had this experience of entering into the club. So luckily, Manish has helped me out. Now, let me straight go into the topic. Now, the topic that the group has suggested is why Ambedkar is so hard to handle. Now, Ambedkar as a historical personality has been on Indian social science, legal studies map for quite long time, particularly ever since he came back from Columbia University and started struggles both against the British and also to establish a democracy that gives equal rights to the entire citizenry of India because of the historical nature of the system that he alone could realize during the freedom struggle that unless the caste system and the spiritual inequalities that got crept into Indian social psyche, unless they are handled and equality question is put before the nation, even if India becomes free from British, not much is going to happen, particularly the untouchability that Indian people are suffering is not going to end. As a result, he thought that Indian society cannot change. So he had a huge engagement with several political figures, but more fundamentally with Mahatma Gandhi. Now, what happened over a period of time, by the time that India was about to achieve independence, was that the main leadership, except perhaps Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who came from an agrarian Shudra background from Gujarat, the rest of them came from mainly 5 communities. Number one, largest number of leaders who studied in England after the British introduced English education in 1853, changing the administrative language of India from Persian to English, and thereafter gradually establishing English medium schools. Mainly the Brahmin youth went to England and studied. Though the beginning of English education happened with Bengal in 1817, but 3 main provinces of British had good English medium schools in the private sector. So after Dadabhai Nauroji, Bengalis went to England and then others went, but the process picked up over a period of time. So most Brahmins went there and studied in English. Then Banyas, who were doing mainly the business work, Kayasthas from eastern India, Khatris from western India, and very few Rajput, the Kshatriyas, went to study in England. Now we must remember the whole people. So they understood the Western world, they understood the global systems, the changes that were coming in the late 19th century and early 20th century. But from among the untouchables, it was only Ambedkar who could go abroad, and particularly America, Columbia University, thereafter England, and studied, unlike many Indians who did in England, studied economics, world history, and later on law, philosophy, and there he also studied Sanskrit because he was not taught Sanskrit in India. So he went to Germany and studied Sanskrit in Bonn University. Now it required for him to burn his entire family energies, his wife and children, because most of our freedom fighters had early child marriages. Uh, Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar, all of them. So, and he studied because of Baroda king, and he came back. Now, by then, Gandhi returned to India in 1915, and then Patel was already a legal expert and doing good practice before the Kheda movement was started in Gujarat. Now, Nehru also studied most of his life in England and came back. So, if you look at the fulcrum of the freedom leadership, whether it is Gandhi, Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, or Maulana Azad, who came from a very big feudal Muslim family, studied on his own English, Urdu, Persian, and so on and so forth. So, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, they were working as a team, whereas Ambedkar was outside that team. So he never joined Indian National Congress, rather started fighting with the civil society to bring about a transformation of the people's understanding and questions of caste and inequality and untouchability, drinking water and so on and so forth based on his childhood experiences and so on. But the freedom fighters at the other end were not recognizing him. And there was also a massive campaign that he was pro-British, and even the left leaders, Dange and many other left leaders were abusing him, being a lackey of British colonialists and so on. So it was a very vicious situation. So what Ambedkar did was, something that was unthinkable. What he did was he did not care for all this. He started fighting for equality in the civil society. For example, Mahad tank movement, and then anti-untouchability campaigns, and then representing with the British that equal citizenship has to be granted along with the freedom, the right to vote. Unlike in Britain and England, it should be for all adults once the freedom comes to Indian people. On these issues, the Congress, Indian nationalist leaders were not focusing much. They wanted first freedom to be achieved. So there was a vicious atmosphere where his movement was totally misunderstood. But what Ambedkar did was, unlike other leaders, he started writing. Now, that writing was not just sporadic, but a massive amount of writing in world class English with a knowledge of law, philosophy, sociology, and he himself was a trained economist with PhD from Columbia and also London School of Economics. So this kind of education background was not there with any one of the Congress leaders. Whether it was Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, all of them were lawyers. They came back with one degree, and that law of their last legal study was not really combined with the philosophy of law and philosophy of Indian history and philosophy of the European history. Whereas Ambedkar started writing with a combined philosophical, legal, economic, sociological, uh, knowledge based writing. So, when he wrote Annihilation of Caste in 1936, this book became a challenge to Gandhi because Gandhi was also writing very extensively, constantly, both in Gujarati and English. And he wrote already Hind Swaraj as a philosophical text of his understanding of freedom, uh, counterposing Indian civilization to Western civilization. But there was no reference in that. How does the caste system, with such an inequality of layers, the Varnadharma order, or let us say the Dvijas, what I today call the Brahmin, Banya, Kayastha, Khatris, who have the Geneve life and then were not involved in agrarian production. And then the fourth Varna, Shudras, who were divided into hundreds of castes and artisanal occupations with productive skills and artisanal skills, but totally unequals even in religious life in that Hindu religious system also. Then below that you have a massive population of 17 to 18% untouchables. Then you have Adivasis in these forest zones and also parts of plains. Now, in no writing, this system was examined. Now, what should happen to this system once the British go, or even when the British was there? Because even when the British was there were two kinds of reforms that started with the appealing to the same British crown and government. One was from the Bengal region, Raja Ram Mohan Roy's Brahma Samaj reforms. The other one started slightly after that with Mahatma Phule in Bombay province with a theoretical formulation called Satya Shodhak Samaj. So there was a huge difference. Brahma Samaj was looking the whole reform of mainly Brahmin women or Kshatriya women who were suffering in the hands of male chauvinism, like sati, child marriage, permanent widowhood, with the help of the British Crown and the local viceroys and the governors. Whereas Mahatma Phule started a movement to abolish caste and establish equal society within the British colonial regime. So the Congress nationalists mainly owned up Raja Ram Mohan Roy's reform movement, but not Mahatma Phule's reform movement. So when they did not own up Mahatma Phule's reform movement, then naturally there was a huge problem. So Ambedkar on the other side owned that tradition that we have to fight for freedom, and then both within the British colonial period and post-colonial period, we have to look for equality. Now, this two-school struggle gradually reached to a pinnacle by the time freedom was about to arrive. Now, this is where, Gandhi, Nehru, Sardar Patel on one side, and Ambedkar and his associates on the other side, who worked out an ideology of reservation along with the whole problem that was cropping up with the Muslim question, that Jinnah and Iqbal, who worked out a theory of two nations and then started asking for separate representation in the provincial governments that were about to be formed in 1937. So Ambedkar proposed a reservation system within the electoral process and also in the job. So this was a big conflict. Now Gandhi went on a huge hunger strike against the reservation formula that Ambedkar suggested. So there were lots of tensions. Therefore, Ambedkar was completely misunderstood by the Indian National Congress leadership and also the entire Dvija intellectual community and the upper caste, by and large. He was seen as a Deshadrohi. So, but what happened luckily was that before the independence was just arriving, Gandhi realized that unless they rope in Ambedkar, number one, there was no such a multiple knowledgeable person to lead the drafting of the constitution with the grounding of Indian ideology and Western ideology with legal and philosophical understanding. Second, if he does not come into the team, then the Dalits and others would be not included in the freedom that comes later. Then that will be another problem added to uh, the partition of India already done. It was about to be done anyway, because that agreement was already reaching. So Gandhi negotiated with Ambedkar and roped in to draft the constitution as a chairman of the committee. And he came in. I mean, the man's intellectual vision was such that he was willing to compromise. He was willing to work with the people whom he fought for almost 20 25 years before this stage has come. So he joined the Constituent Assembly, and then he became the chairman of the drafting committee. Now, after the freedom, see, we all know that Gandhi went out of the scene once the freedom is achieved and the communal rights happened, and after that his murder happened. So the people who were to build the democratic system, because you all must understand that there is a discussion going on that the new parliament building has to be named after Ambedkar. Now I was trying to research who would be eligible to name Indian parliament after one's own name. Normally, world over, who would compete for that name? Now, I listed out three names. Number one, Ambedkar. Number two, Sardar Patel. Number three, Jawaharlal Nehru. Whereas Gandhi, anyway, was not in the process of making of the constitution and visualizing the post freedom democratic institutions, and then the rights question of women, the rights of Dalits, the rights of Adivasis, and the rest of the Shudras. So, I thought that now, given Modi's relationship to Nehru and the Nehru family, or the BJP RSS relationship, they don't think of putting Nehru's name in any case. The two people who compete for that would be Ambedkar and Sardar Patel. And for both of them, of course, BJP is trying to be uh, co-opting and owning and so on. Now, between Patel and Ambedkar merits more because of his vision, his philosophy, his understanding of India, both from the Buddhist point of view, the Hindu Vedic evolution, whether it is mythology, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Vedas and the whole history of Indian civilization, Jainism, Indian Islam, Indian Christianity, and he was an expert in four languages. He could speak very effectively four languages, though he was mainly writing in English. He was a good speaker in Hindi, of course, English unmatching, and Marathi, and also Sanskrit. And he also knew Gujarati too, because Gujarat was part of Maharashtra at that time. So he was the one who finally gave a constitution that was workable. That is very important. If a constitution was not workable in a country of so many diversities, take for example the diversity of food culture itself. These days there is a debate, even from the ruling groups, that India should become vegetarian. But if India becomes vegetarian, it can't survive, because 60% of food basket is from the meat and fish and other uh, non-vegetarian items. I don't want to call non-vegetarian, but it's basically meatarian, fisharian, whatever you eat, that. So food culture, multi-religions, and thousands of castes. Each caste hates the other. Even within the Brahmins, there were no coherent relationships. The Gotras and even Kayasthas, Khatris, and others were not in friendly relationship. Kshatriyas were not in agreement with Brahmins. So, in such a situation, if Ambedkar were not to visualize a constitution where accommodation, understanding, give and take, give and take attitude, and then ultimately the question of women, that he was for a uniform code, which Muslims opposed on the one side, conservative Brahmins, RSS also strongly opposed. Huge rallies were made, and they were actually praising Manu and Manu Dharma Shastra as against Ambedkar's ideology. So it was in this situation that Ambedkar worked as a law minister, and along with Nehru, Patel, on the one side, unification of nation was taking place. 3 states were creating problem: Kashmir, Junagadh, and Hyderabad state. So Patel was working on unification of the agenda, whereas Nehru was working as prime minister with the borders and the partitioned nation, economy, so on. Whereas Ambedkar, as a law minister, was putting in place how to implement law in India where there is no law. India never had a legal system. That Manu legal system was only coercion. No, it was not a proper legal system with rights. Even when compared to Chinese, we had no discipline. We had no working culture. Agriculture was seen as bad by Brahmin Pandits for a long time. Pollution, purity and pollution. So, in this atmosphere, Ambedkar has done a tremendous job. But what happened later, Nehru continued for 17 years as Prime Minister. In my view, that was the greatest mistake he made. Because during that 17 years Prime Ministership, and later on Indira Gandhi came, she was his daughter, with a short period Lal Bahadur Shastri, but he was also a strong Nehruvian. Then came, uh, Rajiv Gandhi and so on. So during that period till 1990, except Gandhi and Nehru, they have not recognized any major contributor to the Indian nation building. They neglected even Sardar Patel, who was part of them. But Sardar Patel, being a Shudra, who did not write much, but was a great administrator, so they did not even give him Bharat Ratna for a long time. Whereas Radha Krishnan and P.V. Kane and who had done small things were given Bharat Ratna and all recognition. Uh, uh, all kinds of things were happening between South and North and so on, because Rajgopalachari and Gandhi relationship and Nehru relationship. So till 1990, Ambedkar was not allowed to be studied as part of the syllabus in Indian universities. Because I was a student in the 70s in my post-graduation political science. So we were studying Tagore, we were studying Gandhi, we were studying Nehru, but never Ambedkar was taught. We were studying Raja Ram Mohan Rai, but not Pule's name was not even known. The left people also simply crushed him rather aggressively. They used to say the moment Ambedkar's name is taken, they used to say he was a lackey of the British. Now, I myself, as a student, used to think that way because the left movement was treating him as an agent of British. So, except occasionally he used to be mentioned as the chairman of the drafting committee, but nothing else. No book of his was made available to read in public. So, this atmosphere continued till 1990 Mandal movement. I would say that the Mandal resurrected Ambedkar wisdom in a massive way. Because we were the ones who started saying, no, Ambedkar must be taught in the classrooms. And series of seminars. I remember in 1995 or so, we had a seminar on Ambedkar in Jawaharlal Nehru University. Hardly 20 people attended that. No senior professor, no reader, what we call associate professor. No academician of worth name came and attended and recognized that. So in the universities, when we were talking about Ambedkar, they used to laugh at us. Who is this? What is this Ambedkar's contribution? So once that Mandal reservation came and the VP Singh government and Mandal recommendation, and then he getting closed. He getting Bharat Ratna by VP Singh government, so on and so forth. So gradually, all his writings came out. And I remember when Maharashtra government printed all his volumes, after his wife and Vasant Mohan together, brought out all his unpublished volumes. All in all, about 18 volumes in those days. There was a massive protest by Shiv Sena, BJP, RSS, and the anti-Ambedkarites all over, that riddles of Ram and Krishna book, which was part of a volume. No, I think it was part of third volume or something. So that was demanded for banning, complete ban. So the Maharashtra Dalits, just one day, 5 to 10 lakh people came into streets to defend that book. So finally, the Maharashtra government kept it in the book and said that though we do not agree with it, since it was Ambedkar's work and he is no more there, so we are making it part of the text. Now it is being studied all over and so on. So till Maharashtra government brought out the volumes and Annihilation of Caste and who were the Shudras book. Because for Shudras, who constitute today 52% of Indian population, there was no thinker, there was no writer. Sardar Patel did not write anything about Shudra community. He himself was against reservation when Ambedkar was fighting for it in the Constituent Assembly. So he agreed for OBC. Became a suspect in the houses of the upper caste. Upper caste mainly the educated North Indian social science, doctor, engineer kind of families, that Ambedkar is seen as a man who was taking away the reservation jobs and so on and so forth. So they were not willing to study him. Young students were not allowed to read him. In classroom, he was not being referred to. In the syllabus, he was not being added. I remember in Usmania University, it was my time when I was a head in 2003 to 5. We included, now when Ambedkar was not studied, there was no question of studying Buddha, because it was Ambedkar who brought in the Buddhist knowledge into Indian Constitution and Constituent Assembly. When Indian flag was being made, the finalization committee consisted of 7 or 8 people. It was earlier they thought of having the 3 color, of course, came from different backgrounds, but they were insisting on charka being in the center of the white part of the flag. So that was already Congress flag. So including Gandhi wanted his charka symbol to be in the national flag. It was Ambedkar who suggested Ashok Chakra in the middle of the flag. And then he gave a theoretical explanation for that. Because at every stage, if you look at Constituent Assembly debates, he was the man who spoke most in the Constituent Assembly with highly philosophical knowledge. Nobody could counter him. So, for example, he said, see, charka is one community's or one occupational symbol, that weaving. But weaving does not represent a philosophical view of the nation. So he said the wheel is a symbol of constant movement and progress. Because this was adopted, wheel was adopted during the Ashoka period as a wheel of bullock cart. Indian bullock cart revolution took place only during Ashoka period, transport. So that Ashoka brought into his Sarnath stupa and so on. So Ambedkar explained to the Constituent Assembly members committee that wheel is a symbol of constant movement and progress, up and down, constant change. So therefore, a wheel is part of everything. You look at today, wheel is part of transport to a bullock cart, even to a cycle, even to a car, even to aeroplane. Without wheel, nothing moves in the world. Now, would a world understood if we put charka there? And what philosophy does it represent? It is a cloth weaving, one mission, small village level mission. So the Gandhian backward looking and the Ambedkarite, global philosophical vision with Buddhist knowledge is the one that brought into the parliament Ashoka lions, 3 lions. What was the 3 lions? It was not war mongering, but it was lion which is domesticated as a symbol of protection. So that's how, the lions were brought in, and Ashok Chakra was brought in, and Ambedkar gave huge explanation for the Buddhist progress. And those of you who are interested, please read my book, God as Political Philosopher. Before the world had a political philosopher, we had a political philosopher in Buddha. The idea of democracy, liberty, equality, fraternity, Ambedkar drew from Buddhist courses and tribal republics. because in Vedic texts there was no idea of democracy, and a lot of debate happened. Even Gandhi could not produce any evidence for and he was against that democracy. He wanted village kind of panchayat system and so on. So Ambedkar could not come into our reading, our family understanding. See, unfortunately, you all must understand, India does not inculcate a habit of reading among children. Reading of books. No, in Brahman, Banya, Kayastha, Khatri families who were religious, they would read Ramayana, Mahabharat, or sometimes. But as a teacher in all my life, I was asking batch after batch, how many of you think that you are Hindus? Then some number of students raised their hands. I would ask them, how many of you saw Bhagavad Gita as a book? You know, very few people saw that book. And then how many of you read that book? You know, in my entire life, 10 students must have said, Sir, I read Bhagavad Gita. And all of them came from only Brahmin families. Now, if the rest of the students never read anything, you ask the same question in America or Europe, or ask in any Muslim community, how many of you read Quran? 90% would say we read. Few of them understand it, that's all. Their understanding is a problem because that they read in Arabic and they hardly understand. But if you ask in the Western universities, how many of you read Bible? 100% children will raise their hand. Now, there is no reading habit in India among the children and parents. Now, that is the reason why we, even as adults, don't read books when we are traveling in the flights, when we are in the stations, airports. Whereas you see Europeans or Americans, they constantly read wherever they sit. So Ambedkar was not read, even Gandhi was not read properly. So only these university teachers, school teachers are not reading now. And this is a big tragedy of India. So what happened was Ambedkar became a problem in the even Shudra houses. Even my own community, I come from a shepherd community, which is very, very low-end OBC caste. We are actually more backward caste in the Telangana region. Our people don't like Ambedkar. No, he's for Dalits. I said, who told you? You never read anything about him. Did you read Annihilation? Who wrote about Shudras? Or Dalit Shudras? So it was the first book on Shudras in Indian history after Mahatma Phule's Gulamgiri was Ambedkar's book. Massive research. So today I would suggest to this group, take up a campaign for book reading in the schools. And in my view, you should all take up a campaign for making English medium compulsory in government schools, as Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have already done. Because but for English in my childhood in villages, English words, you know, any technology that came to villages in the 60s also, it came with English words. In my village, when I was a child of 10, 12, 13, there was no cycle. But when cycle came, when I was 16 or so, it came with an English name, cycle. Right? When villagers started traveling, not by walking, they went into only bus, which is English. They went into only train, which is English. So the technology and English language were, twins. So we fought in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana for English medium in government schools from LKG to 12th. Now that is already implemented in both the states. So what I would request is take a campaign among teachers that they should read, and they should have books of Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, even Savarkar. Unless we read uh, uh, contending ideas, we won't develop clarity of thought. I read so much of Buddha, so much of Vedic literature, so much of discourse on Rama and Mahabharata to write my thesis on Gautam Buddha's political philosophy. Plato, Aristotle, how to counter them. So I would request this group that irrespective of your caste background, take up a campaign and don't get into sentimentalities. If India becomes English nation, what happens? Nothing happens. India remains much stronger India than what it is today. It doesn't become America. It doesn't become England, or it doesn't become Australia. So that is the reason why Ambedkar, with a great vision, wrote in English consistently and world-class English. Nehru also wrote very good English. Gandhi was not writing in good English at all. He was not a good writer, but he was writing in Gujarati and translating and getting translated and so on. So, every 5th October we celebrate Indian English Day, and that is also Global Teachers Day, International Teachers Day. So, I would request to see that young people do not treat thinkers as untouchable, whatever caste they come from. Bengalis don't read Ambedkar, and they read Marx, Lenin, I know quite a lot. But what happened? Where are Marx and Lenin now in Bengal? See, they hated native knowledge, and the Bengali intellectuals are all over the world now. But what is the development of Bengal now? So what happened to the communist movements now? So this fundamentalism or the RSS kind of approach also, it doesn't work. You are opposing English medium for the SC, ST, OBCs and Shudras and others, but your own family send your children to English medium. So this hypocrisy is very, very bad for a nation. So we should have freedom to study wherever they like and whichever they like, but we should have one national language. I agree with them that one nation, one language, but that one language should be English. So are you going to take away English from all industrialists, all elite of Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Chennai, Hyderabad? No. So when you can't take that away from them, why do you ask the rural children or the tribals or the poor or the labor to study in the regional languages? So what I would request you is that tell the people, prepare a list of 5 thinkers, and see, they should be contending thinkers. Even in ancient India, ask them to read Buddha and Kautilya and Manu in contrast. These are only 3 original writers in ancient India. The others are, we don't know, writers. Ramayana and Mahabharata are epics. They are stories and so on. So similarly, in modern India, whoever is ruling, whether it is Congress or BJP or whatever is ruling, ask them to read Gandhi, Ambedkar, Nehru, Savarkar, and Rabindranath Tagore. No problem. But they should read original books, they should read. Now, this non-reading habit and just listening and going away does not make India a stronger nation vis-a-vis China. And my feeling is, if this culture continues, if we don't develop a strong scientific vision, scientific orientation with English language, even Pakistan will improve far will be far ahead of India within next 50 years, because they will, once they begin to change, they will change. It is a monolithic cultural value. So China is already ahead of us in everything. So if we are contesting them, if we are fighting them, let us fight with the idea of future science, not just faith. You have religion, I have no problem, but not conservative uh, uh, fundamentalism, where somebody eating something though you don't like it, therefore go and talk. No, if India takes away meat food from its plates, within 1 year millions will die. And if people don't read the food culture of people, food resource of people, where are the vegetables for people to eat? The whole 140 million, 140 million, 1,400 million people should eat food every day, 3 times. And that is protein food. How can you defeat Pakistan and China without eating meat and becoming strong, and particularly in young age? So these values have to change. Now that is possible only when young kids in the school and colleges read very rigorously. So I would say to see that Ambedkar is not seen as uh, a, a bad person, not seen as a bad thinker, and so on and so forth by certain youth or others, then you have to make the children to read. Now, see, there are people who hate Savarkar. I know. Even we used to think that Savarkar is. I think that Savarkar is a negative thinker, but I want to read him first. If he is a negative, even then I will critique. Yeah, are you hearing me?
Yes,
Yes, we
Professor.
can.
Yes,
We can.
yes,
Yeah.
Very
Praveen.
So
attentively. Please go
I
ahead.
would say that even if you disagree with a thinker, your right to exist in the syllabus, the thinker's right to exist in the syllabus has to be respected, and we should start thinking about having contending ideas. When Mao said in China that let 100 flowers bloom and 100 thoughts contend, but their practice did not allow 100 thoughts to contend. That's a big problem for them. But in India, there is this drive of monolithic thinking. Progress in a nation, in Indian sociology and Indian academia keep studying that food production is pollution. In one of my early writings, I said labor is life. If you hate labor, then you are killing the nation. And mud is food. Without mud, there is no food production possible in India. So if a community or intellectual hates mud, does not want to put his fingers in the mud, then that nation is doomed. So if you don't teach dignity of labor in all schools, so what is wrong with shoemaking? What is wrong in removing the dead carcass from the village? It is cleaning. It is protecting the village. And that is written as devil's work. Now, this kind of literature does not allow our mind to be open. So, what we need to do, whether we are young or old, please read contending ideas. If some thinker is attacking some other thinker, go to that thinker and read who is being attacked also. So that is where the knowledge blossoming starts. So Ambedkar is hated in certain families. Congress used to hate Ambedkar. Communists used to hate Ambedkar. RSS, BJP used to hate Ambedkar for a long time. Now they are not. They are behaving differently now. And I read yesterday Ramnath Kovind's article in Indian Express, and it was translated in Telugu also here, that Modi is the real follower of Ambedkar. And so the question is that people need to rethink about their positions, and nobody should be untouchable. If we abolish untouchability of all ideas and body, practice, work, then India becomes a most competing nation to the West and even China and the world. So I'll stop here. And I know Manish was telling me that there are people who want to ask hard questions. Let them ask. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mangesh, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for this, this speech. And we have so many questions which came to us in the previous session. So I would like to ask this question one by one. I'm requesting all the audiences, whatever questions we had, we are trying to take as many as questions. But again, we have to see that how much time Professor have with us. So the
No, go
first
ahead.
question.
Go ahead. I'm free this evening for you sake.
Sure, sir.
No problem. Yeah.
Sure, sir. The first question was that we see a clear vision of emancipation from caste oppression. Does Dr. Ambedkar present also clear plan of economic emancipation? Does he favor a economic model like Shahid Bhagat Singh, who favored communism?
No, Ambedkar was very cautious of three kinds of dictatorships when he was working on the constitution. Now, the constitution was being drafted. There were three types of dictatorships in the world. One, the Muslim world was by and large under the what they call mullah authority and the ulema authority, and then the prophetic evolution created only monarchy in the Muslim world. So there were number of dictatorships in the Muslim world, and in the partition period, the debate was constantly referring to the entire Islamic history. Second one, there was a dictatorship in Europe. Hitler and Mussolini emerged as a counterpoint to the democracy that got evolved in Britain and America. So that dictatorship was the second one. The third one was communist proletariat dictatorship. Now, this communist movement in 1947, 48 till 50, when we were drafting the constitution, was a big influence in the world. Russia was a Soviet state, and proletariat dictatorship was already in existence. China has already become People's Republic of China under with the theory of proletariat dictatorship. So Ambedkar very seriously was against any kind of dictatorship, including the communist kind of proletariat dictatorship. I think he proved to be right. because Nehru in a way was inclined towards communism to some extent. There were a number of others, Lohia and Jayaprakash and so on and so forth. But Ambedkar was very clear that any dictatorship model does not allow the untouchables and the historically oppressed Shudras to become equal through the right to vote. So he depended heavily on right to vote. Now, what about economic development in these systems? Now, he carefully studied not the British model but the American. American democracy by then was not a colonial democracy. It was a democracy freed from colonialism, the British colonial. And it has not yet become imperial country by then. Only in the World War First, America came out and then started negotiating with other countries, and its uh, power was being shown outside. But otherwise, America known as isolationist nation. So he thought that people should release their energies through a democratic practice in production. He was basically an economist. He studied Indian rupee, he studied provincial economics. So, and he wanted planning commission ministry for himself, not law. He said the constitution is there and I am part of the cabinet. Give me planning department. I will work out a method for Indian. But Nehru did not give him. So he knew what kind of economic models should come up. Of course, except Nehru, any one of these freedom fighters of the first cabinet did not live long. So that limitation was there, but he knew. It was not like, see, Bhagat Singh was not a thinker. He wrote, after all, he was 23 years old boy. He wrote some uh, uh, good ideas that he had into a small pamphlet. And he believed in Lenin kind of system and so on. But by the time he was killed, uh, Lenin died and all that, and Soviet was there. But internally, what was happening in Soviet Union was not known to outside world. So Bhagat Singh had respectable ideas, no doubt. But Ambedkar was far more a planned economic thinker. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is which we got today only, and this is very interesting question. So I'm just preempting these questions to be uh, uh, a view on Suraj Yangde's view that Hindu versus Muslim is an eyewash of Ashraf versus Brahmin, and with Dalits and Shudras need not follow that and need to fight outside that as a separate entity. So, what was your comment on this, Professor?
Now, can you repeat that? I couldn't properly get it.
Sir, this Suraj Yangde's view is that Hindu versus Muslim is an eyewash of Ashraf versus Brahmin, and we Dalits and Shudras need not follow that and need to fight outside that as a separate entity.
Yeah. See, in fact, once Yangde and myself were in US in the same conference when the Kashmir question was boiling in India. So there, when we were in the conference, they were saying that we should protest against what is happening in India and Kashmir and Muslims. No, I also said that look, the Muslim problem is different problem. The Dalit and Shudra problem is a 3,000 years old problem. The Muslim question vis-a-vis the RSS BJP today or historically at the time of the partition is a global question. Muslim community is a global community with one religion and one book and one idea. But we were placed in much worse conditions. So the Muslim intellectuals never bothered about our condition in their ruling time or in their intellectual time. So therefore, their problem should not be mixed up with this. Now, even now, a lot of Muslims ask me that why do you have only OBC Dalit conference? Why not OBC Dalit minority? I said, no, Christians and Muslims should handle their problem separate because your problem is not of education, not of historical oppression, not of untouchability, whereas ours is much worse problem. Now, where is your contribution to abolish that problem? See, you have, let us say, Jamia Millia or Aligarh Muslim University, and Muslim education is all through right from 13th century onwards. So, how many of you wrote against untouchability, against the Shudra inequality in this country? You did not. So, therefore, we have very few intellectuals now. We need to focus around the abolition of untouchability and caste inequalities and then anti dignity of labor. And among Muslims now, there is this problem Pasmanda Muslims and feudal upper caste Muslims. So, unless that question is also addressed, you know, it is true that, attacking them on their food culture, attacking them on their right to be equal in the nation has to be opposed. But we can't invest the few SC, ST, OBC intellectuals on that question, and Suraj Engde is understanding more or less the same.
Thank you, sir. We have Sualal sir here on the panel. So, Sualal sir, if you have any question, please go ahead. And after that, Alexis, if you have noted some of the questions from the chat, you can also go ahead after Sualal sir. Sualal sir, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mangesh. Actually, I'm not well, so I can't speak much. Only question, just two words I want to ask. Ambedkar's socialism. We see that it was very relevant then the time also and in today's context also. So I want to know just some basic of Ambedkar socialism, and because you are a scholar on Ambedkar, I thought, as I know. So it will be helpful to me like teacher. I teach in Mizoram University, so I have to need it's more because there are not much scholarly literature available on the medical socialism. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Ambedkar proposed state socialism in a small document called States and Minorities. In another lecture that he gave in Kathmandu just before his death, called Buddha or Karl Marx, and in some printing it is Buddha and Karl Marx, in some printing it is Buddha or Karl Marx. Now, in Buddha or Karl Marx, he says that violence, as the communists are preaching, I am opposed to, and proletariat dictatorship, I am opposed to. But distribution of land among the tillers is a positive idea. So this idea he has elaborated in his States and Minorities document, which was supposed to be his own constitution for the nation before he drafted the main Indian constitution. Now, in that, what he says is the limited land that we have has to be primarily owned by state, and people must be asked to work on that land as employees. Uh, and then, based on their needs, wage needs to be paid according to their labor contribution. And also, industry, he says that state has to establish industry, again as the Gandhian view of uh, gram level technology only should be used. You know that Gandhi was opposed to even using fountain pen, and he wanted only dip pen kind of a thing, or feather, or so on. So he was that kind of an anti-industrialist. So Ambedkar said that we have to go for large scale industrial establishment, and land repulling, taking away land from the feudal controls. And also, a lot of land was under the temple control in India at that time. In Bengal, in Andhra Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu, many other states. So he said land must be used for agricultural production, but not kept as fallow land under the divine dispensation. So his socialism was basically, uh, since India has more number of people and less amount of land available, because you know that we have only one third land and as many people as China has when compared to China. China has 3 times more land than India. It is a bigger country, 3 times more. So, given this problem, he was thinking of state owning the landed property. But later on, it is proved that that was a very difficult proposition, because given the jamindari, jagirdari that we had, and of course the Dalit landlessness is a major problem even now, and the OBC landlessness and labor is also a huge problem. But the entire land owning by the state uh, would have been a very difficult proposition. Later on, of course, this cooperativization came in as part of the state socialism. And now BJP is thinking that whatever state industries are established as part of the Nehruvian idea of democratic socialism and mixed economy, BJP want to privatize that. But there is a big problem with that, because reservations will completely go, and there is no private sector reservation in India. So Ambedkar had certain idea of land and industry being run by the state, uh, because the feudals and the jamindars and jagirdars otherwise would exploit the masses. Already they were exploiting. So it was only to reduce the exploitation, but I don't know if that were to be put in implementation, how it would have been worked, we don't know. Because I know I studied land reforms in Andhra Pradesh for my MPhil. The landlords deceived the governments hugely. They never declared proper land, they never declared honestly anything, and they were deceiving governments. So there is a lot of dishonesty problem in India. So that needs to be overcome through education. So that is what is state socialism is. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir. Mayank?
Professor. Yeah. Hello, Professor. This is Mayank.
Yeah.
So, uh, I hope you are well. So, there's a question from Mr. Satya Prakash, and
Yeah.
he asked that since you always say that people won't unite until there is a cultural reason, so what can be the cultural reason for people now to unite against a fascist government? How do you propose for all seculars specifically to unite against this fascist regime? This is the question he's asked. The
No,
cultural reason,
the
yeah.
question is unity among people uh, with less exploitation and deceptivity is a cultural question, no doubt, and a religious question. So, my idea is even Ambedkar was stressing that we need to work more on spiritual equality issue. Take, for example, today BJP, RSS are ruling India. They are saying that we support Indian Constitution, we work with according to Indian Constitution only. But Congress at that time, when it was ruling with the same constitution, it was saying that we are secular party. We don't touch the religious problems and inequalities because that does not come under our purview. Now, in Hinduism, if Hinduism is everybody's religion, it is Dalits' religion, it is Shudra's religion, it is Adivasi's religion, then RSS should ask for priesthood rights in Hindu temples for every Hindu. It is leading organization. It is a Hindu organization. It wants Hindu unity. Now,
Professor, your voice is breaking.
schools and colleges, theology and theological institutions, they should have started. Now, without a spiritual a
Professor,
social revolution is certainly a political
Professor,
revolution is not
Professor,
possible.
Professor, can you hear
Huh.
me?
Yeah,
Yeah, you were not audible for at least 1.5 minutes. So if you can please repeat, what you were
yeah,
saying,
yeah. I'll
so
repeat.
we'll be able to hear.
I'll
Yeah, yeah,
repeat.
please.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are quite audible. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, what I'm saying is total unity of Indians leaving this Hindu, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, this and that minority majority issue. Abolition of caste can be done in the spirit, it should be done in the spiritual system. Now, Congress was saying when it was ruling, we are a secular party, we don't go into the religious problems. But now BJP, RSS are religious organizations and religious party. Now, when they are ruling, why are they not saying that all Hindus should have the right to become priests in Hindu temples? Whoever children, the parents want to send their children, whether they are Dalit, whether they're tribal or Shudra or Brahmin or Kayastha, whatever, they should have the right to go to religious schools study the theological issues and become priests. Once an untouchable is a priest in temple, or a Shudra is in a priest in a temple, then the only problem remains is food culture. Now, one issue that we have to resolve is, in the entire history of religions, there is no debate that God is vegetarian. Nowhere in the world. Offerings to the God should be done only in vegetarian. God is a creator of the universe, including the animals, plants. So, how do you define God as vegetarian now? Then it created food cultural problems. So, it must be left to the choice of the people. Now, this is available among the Shudras. In our villages, all kinds of food items that people eat are offered to the divine figures, deities, and so on. So, it is my point of view is, I've been repeatedly writing, it is the duty of RSS and BJP to sort out this issue. Okay, religious priests, Shankaracharyas or priest temples, they don't do it. They have an interest in that. But what about these political organizations of religion? So religion must unite first, abolish caste, food cultural inequality. Then cultural revolution will take place. Ambedkar talks about first cultural revolution happening, then political revolution. He gives the example of Sikhs. He gives the example of Ravidasis and so on. So RSS being a religious organization should take the lead now in the power. No, I'm not saying you have no right to take the power. People voted, you have a right. Now you can't say that I also don't touch this, but call all Hindus one. They are not one now. They are untouchables. They are unequals. So this is the problem that we need to sort out. World literature does not give us any clarity on this. We have to write and evolve theories for us. You have mythology, but mythology does not give us religious methodology. So you need to rework your spiritual methodology also. So this is a huge task before the next generations, because Hinduism is being debated more and more now after BJP came to power. Let us see how our youth handle this in future. Now there is a tension, no doubt. So it's a huge question. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Professor.
Professor.
Yeah.
Alexis, you have chosen some questions from the listeners, so please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Professor. Three questions to ask, but I'll proceed with the first one. Professor, can you please articulate your opinion on EWS and how the ongoing privatization along with EWS is going to impact the actual reservations that are supposed to cater to the deprivations of the OBC and the SC/ST communities?
Well, it's a very urgent issue now. I'm glad you raised it. On the one side, Prime Minister Modi said I am an OBC, and in 2013, just before the 14 elections in Kerala, he said for next 10 years uh, there will be a Dalit revolution in India. I will see that happens. Now, on the reservation front, RSS and BJP certain sections and Modi are speaking in different tongues. But in practice, Modi has not done substantially anything different for OBC reservation and SC/ST reservation. On the contrary, he has implemented 10% economic EVC reservation. Now, okay, even that I am, so I think that I can go around it with it, because over and above 50%, whatever reservation they give, let them give. But the huge privatization without talking about reservation in private sector is a different strategy of de-reserving the system. Now, my feeling is people will tolerate this for some more time. But if they do it more and more without opening up the reservation question in private sector, and it is linked up to English medium education in government and private on equal basis. Because the BJP government talks about equality of education like Europe. Their 2020 education policy borrows a lot from European education system, 4-year degree. But they don't accept English medium at the ground level for all. And they are allowing the private sector companies to open up huge number of English medium schools for rich. Private universities. And these private universities are running completely with Western syllabus and English media. Now BJP is saying teach in Hindi and regional languages in government universities. That means JNU, Delhi universities, central universities will have to teach in Hindi and other languages. So what will happen with this? So you are handing over the system to private sector to be global, and the local poor people will get Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu education. No, finish. So it will create a big problem for them only. They are not understanding. It may lead to a major civil war situation. So I agree with you. There's a lot of concern now, a lot of debate is going on inside. Social media is now volatile. So this privatization without talking about reservation is going to create a huge problem for themselves. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. The
You
previous
said
question
one more
was
question,
asked
I know.
by yes, Professor. So the next question is, there is an argument that is thrown around casually by the Indian Marxists as a criticism against the Ambedkarite movement, which is faint, but yet I think it'd be better if they hear from an intellectual like yourself. It is that Ambedkarism as an ideology has no set of rules or a particular definition. So it does not, in order for it to be legitimized as an ideology, it does not pass the test or whatever because it does not have its own set of rules. So, what would you like to say about that?
No, see, as of now, Ambedkarism is basically among the Dalit intellectuals as a strong current. It has not come into huge intellectual debate among Shudra OBCs because there are hardly any intellectuals there. If you look at from among the OBC intellectuals, except me, nobody from the OBC background writes on Ambedkar, his philosophy, and his vision, and so on. For example, Yogendra Yadav is there. He says he's an OBC but never supports the reservation as we do. He never accepts, writes anything on Ambedkar ideology. Hardly any intellectuals are there. Now, the others, the left intellectuals, never seriously, critically owned Ambedkar as they owned Nehru for a long time or Marx for a long time and so on. So Ambedkar has to become now universal thinker in India and abroad, like what happened in the case of Martin Luther King in America. Martin Luther King is a hugely American thinker now, not a black thinker. That's what the whites did there. The white intellectuals owned him, his legacy, and whereas the Ambedkar's legacy is not owned by, leave alone, Brahmins and Kayasthas, Khatris, and so on, Central University teachers, social science departments. But even OBC intellectuals have not really engaged. So I am hoping that with the new generation getting educated in social sciences, if they become seriously intellectual from all caste communities and engage with Ambedkar, but it has to start, as I said, from the school. School children should know who is Ambedkar, what is, like the US and UK kids, that the basic thinkers must be known from the school level, not as as caste people, this and that, but thinkers. So then Ambedkar would become universally accepted. Equality, liberty, fraternity will become the common ideological goals of nation. So I hope that happens in future. As of now, it is a problem. I know what you are saying. Yeah,
There is another question from Dr. Darshan.
yeah.
Um, what is your view on current state of Ambedkarite movement vis-a-vis other leftist movements in India? And what are your hopes and expectations for the OBC and the Shudras in the anti-caste movement for emancipation of Dalits as a Shudra and anti-caste leader yourself?
Well, uh, I would say that the Ambedkarite movement uh, has caught up quite hugely after specifically 2000 onwards. In the universities, Ambedkar student unions came up, associations came up, and intellectual rigor has expanded. And the first generation post Ambedkar scholars were mostly poets, let us say Maharashtra Dalit Panther movement, and in South Indian, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh also. Only Telugu poets were Ambedkar. Now it has come into English writing quite hugely. Now Ambedkar has become a more acceptable legal philosopher in the courts. If you see recent judgments, his quotations are figuring more and more for justification of judgment. So in the philosophy and economics departments, he need to be studied more and more. So over a period of time, if his ideas, now there is one problem with Hindutva ideologues owning him in private circles, except in governmental progress, because they think that he is a Buddhist, he is not Hindu. Therefore, why should we own him so much? But if they go on thinking about OBCs also, because a lot of OBCs are around the BJP RSS circles also. Now, I would say that the Ambedkar movement is still in the growing stage, But certainly, uh, having seen the Ambedkar status, Ambedkar movement status in early 70s, 80s, 90s, and now, I am definitely hopeful that Ambedkar is going to lead this intellectual visions of India for all. Even the minority question, he will be taken as a serious. Now Muslims are recognizing him. Several times when I first told Asaduddin Owaisi, you have to study Ambedkar, he said, no, हम Muslims, हम दूसरों को ज़्यादा नहीं पढ़ेंगे. So I said, no, like your father, if you can't study, then he started reading and now he quotes Ambedkar here and there. So there are some Muslim scholars coming up from their end, how he wrote a book, uh, Pakistan issue and so on. So, of course, on Kashmir, BJP RSS is trying to use him against the Muslims. Yesterday's article, Ramnath Kovind himself quoted him. He was against 370 and so on. But this process goes on. So, no, I'm hopeful that the movement will catch up.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. I just have a follow-up question. Do you think the efforts of the OBC or slash the Shudra community to themselves on the anti-caste movement, do you think they're strong enough?
No, the problem with the Shudras today is the Shudra intellectuals have not emerged in social sciences and literature. If you look at South India, Maharashtra, even Bengal, UP, there are no Jat intellectuals, Kama, Reddy, Bengal, uh, Shudra intellectuals, Mahishyas or whatever. So they are either doctors or engineers, some of them, but they were mostly around land and real estate businesses. So still social science knowledge is among Brahmins, Banyas, Kayasthas, Khatris in North India, and still among Brahmins in South India. And they don't want to engage with Ambedkar because there is a fear. He will take away their power. So I have a feeling that the Shudras like Reddis, Kamas, Lingayat, Nayars, for example, this Shashi Tharoor writes a lot on colonialism, on Hinduism, but he doesn't know who Ambedkar is, even though he is in Delhi. He never studied Ambedkar. He is a Shudra. And there is that Sanjay Hegde, a Brahmin from Karnataka, writes in Hindu. And so they don't know anything about Ambedkar's. They hardly read him. So in North India, uh, the Kayastha, I know, for example, people like Manoranjan Mohanty in Delhi University, Neera Chandok, JNU professors, including Romila Thapar and Prabhat Utsa Patnaik, economists. They never recognized Ambedkar and Pule as nationalists and secular. So I used to argue with them, that unless you debate and discuss, no, that is all the caste comes in. We don't want to talk about caste. When caste is there in the system, if you don't want to talk, it is like cancer is there in the body, you don't want to talk and operate medically. So that is the problem with North India and Delhi. I don't think that changed now substantially. Uh, so it takes time, and uh, I am hopeful of the younger generations So that's the reason why I, in my talk, said you all must focus on school education and social science thinkers getting put contending. I don't mind Ambedkar, Gandhi, Savarkar, Nehru being studied together. So that has to be done now.
I
Thank you,
think
Professor.
the idea of including Ambedkar's readings as a part of academic curriculum is the best way to go about educating the
Yeah.
young. And hopefully, while it is not very ideal to hope that the current system will take such decision, it's best we hold on to our hopes and impose ourselves. We have the next question coming from Mayank. Mayank, are you
Hello.
Yeah, I believe I'm
Yeah,
audible.
yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, Professor, this is a question going back to what we intend to discuss. Why Ambedkar is too hot to handle. And the question is with reference to and context to the northern part of
Hmm.
India. And this question rose in my mind a lot of times while reading, while going through your book about the Buffalo Belt and everything else. So, what do you think is the reason that specifically the caste politics, which we call caste politics, which should be called the politics of social justice, in northern India, specifically if we see Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, also Punjab, parts of Punjab,
Hmm.
if you see the movement of social justice or the anti-caste movement, that was supposed to be an Ambedkarite movement, when that rose to power, came into power in the regime,
Hmm.
what do you think were the reasons that again Ambedkar became too hot for them to handle or to touch, to implement, to execute? Also, why there was no movement according to your analysis in the northern part of India like the Periyar did in the southern part of India, or the impact of the Periyar movement?
Yeah, this is a good question, Manish. The problem was that in the post independent period, the intellectual discourse in the universities, in the newspapers, was more about colonialism and the colonial exploitation, and particularly history writing and writing on nationalism and so on. So most of these thinkers, writers, poets, novelists, when they were talking colonialism, they looked at Ambedkar as a pro-colonial man, even though he led the constitution drafting. You take, for example, Arun Shauri's approach to Ambedkar. He wrote a book, Worshipping False God. So, according to him, even in the 90s and 2000s, when little talk of Ambedkar was going on, his statues were being put in the villages. Arun Shauri became restless, and he wrote a book, He's a False God. And for him, Gandhi, to some extent Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, maybe Savarkar, but not Ambedkar. So this kind of mental framework, even left liberals, all of them are anti-Ambedkar. This kind of mental framework made him hot. Any reference to Ambedkar they would dismiss. And leftists, they thought Ambedkar is anti-communist, pro-colonial, and so on and so forth. But they never realized the question of Brahminism in India, the question of caste in India, the question of anti-dignity of labor, the question of purity and pollution, the question of vegetarian and meatarian cultures were not British issues, not colonial issues. They were Indian problems. And Ambedkar Pule were concerned about it. If, say, for example, when I was writing my books, I am not a Hindu or post-Hindu India, Buffalo Nation. When I wrote, why are you saying that North is cow belt? If North is cow belt, does it mean that South is buffalo belt? Then why are you praising cow as the mother of gods and goddesses and so on? But India drinks more milk from buffaloes. So when I wrote this buffalo nationalism book, no left intellectual was willing to touch them. No left intellectual was uh, no no left intellectual was willing to uh, read them. Now, why that kind of a problem? Because the left intellectuals thought that if Ambedkar or this kind of caste questions are raised, then their Marxism will be in crisis. Then Marxism will be in crisis. So, no, that is the reason why in left intellectual homes, once the elders do not talk, children don't talk, children don't learn, don't respect. So when school teachers don't talk, children don't respect. So there is no reference to him in the schools. If there is a reference, it is negative. So Congress has committed a mistake by constantly promoting or putting names of only Gandhi, Nehru, uh, Indira Gandhi, and so on. So that was one problem that arose, which made Ambedkar very hot. Even now, Congress is not willing to put him on their banner along with. See, I have located 8 people as founding fathers and mothers of Indian democracy. You can type that in your Google with my name, it will come. I said I can locate 8 people as real fathers and mothers. We must also see who were the mothers. So I said Gandhi, Ambedkar,
Professor, your voice is
Nehru,
really breaking. Hello?
uh, Jaipal Singh Munda, and then finally a famous Dalit lady called Dakshinayini Velayudan. These are 8 fathers and mothers of Indian, founding fathers and mothers of Indian. I located and then. So whereas BJP is talking about Subhash Chandra Bose, Savarkar, and Deen Dayal Upadhyaya, so on. But they were not there in the making of democracy. They were not there in the Constituent Assembly debates. They were not there in institution building. They were freedom fighters or their own understanding outside. So we need to prepare lists of inclusive people. We can't abandon totally Maulana Azad. How could they remove a tribal great leader like Jaipal Singh and then talk about tribal equality? So these were our secular nationalist leaders, thinkers' problem. Congress has its own problem. Communists have their own problems. So now we need to create a new discourse around inclusive thinkers.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, can you hear us? Hello?
I believe he's lost the connection. Yeah.
And some of you read along with an we build a thinkers list who do not appear to be very hot to future generations.
Professor, can you
Yeah,
hear us? So, Professor, I think your connection is a little poor, so we couldn't hear you for a good 30 seconds. Can you please repeat what you
yeah.
said in the last 30
See,
seconds?
the last 30 seconds or in between, what I was saying is Congress leaders and intellectuals, the right wing leaders and intellectuals, the left wing leaders and intellectuals thought that Ambedkar was anti national, pro British. And they thought that if we bring in him and discuss about him, caste will come into discussion. So once caste comes, it disturbs the whole ecosystem. But that was a wrong understanding. Caste is there in the system, untouchability was there in the system. Universities were full of only few castes. There were no Shudras, there were no Dalits, there were no Adivasis. So they made Ambedkar hot and untouchable. I would say not hot but untouchable for their children also. So now, as I said, I prepared a list of 8 founding fathers and mothers of Indian democracy and constitutional system, in which I included Gandhi, Ambedkar, Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, Rajkumar Amrit Kaur. She was the greatest woman that we produced. She did not marry, she studied in Oxford, and then she donated all her properties. She was the first health minister who set up All India Medical Institute and everything. And then Maulana Azad, Jaipal Singh Munda, and Dakshayani Velayudan, a Dalit woman who introduced K.R. Narayanan to Nehru and sent him to England to study. So these are 8, they were all Constituent Assembly people except Gandhi. So they debated, they systematized, they structured the constitution. All of them were there in the Constituent Assembly. So I am saying that let us promote that kind of an inclusive list. We may disagree with them, but we cannot make them hot or untouchable. That is my idea. Okay?
Yes, Professor. Thank you so much. I just have a little follow-up question, or rather, your agreement or disagreement to the answer that you just gave. So, a very infamous statement that is made by a lot of Dalit intellectuals is that the real fight in this country is not between the right wing or the left wing, but rather fascists and Ambedkarites, because the people that are most endangered when push comes to shove are the marginalized communities, and the main force of their marginalization is caste. Would you agree or disagree?
No, see, I disagree with that formulation. No, if you characterize, let us say, the right wing rulers now as fascists, that is an inaccurate characterization. Once you formulate as inaccurate formulation, then your fight becomes difficult. They are right wing, they are anti Muslim, and they want to rule with a Hindu mythological framework in a democracy. Whether that works or not and what conflicts it creates is one major issue. Earlier, in the name of secularism, during the Congress regime and later also, they completely put the caste, untouchability, and Indian intellectual nationalist discourse under the carpet. Our universities were full of Western thinkers. They never taught Buddha. They never taught seriously Kautilya. Because unless you seriously teach them, how do our children understand whether Kautilya is a negative thinker or positive thinker? Or Manu for that matter. So they were only teaching Plato, Aristotle, or the Western thought. So I would say both these approaches have a problem. Now we have to take a Pule Ambedkarite view that study India seriously from Periyar, Pule, Ambedkar were basically Indian thinkers. They were not basically, though Ambedkar was a great Western educated person, but he knew the Indian ethos out and out. So I would say just labeling somebody the right wing as fascist and equating them with Hitler or Mussolini will weaken the fight. Fight has to be realistic. Ambedkarites must use a language that exposes the Brahmanic hegemony rather than use the words like, fascism in Europe or proletarianism or Gramscian language called the subaltern, and it doesn't make any sense to us. So I would say we would work out our own concepts which should explain the character of the ruling forces. So I would take that position vis-a-vis the communal forces and the secular Brahmanic forces. Both of them are uh, uh, are not with anti-caste movement. They want to come to power by keeping the caste intact. So that's not right. So we have to be more cautious about using our concepts.
Yes,
Uh,
Professor. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Jitendra sir is there in the panel. So, Jitendra sir,
Yeah,
if you
you
have
take
any questions,
maybe
please
one
go
or
ahead.
two questions because I'm tired also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jitendra sir.
Thank you for your time, Professor Saab. I've always had a question in the Ambedkarite thought, and not just in the thought of Dr. Ambedkar, but of the people who follow in his
Hmm.
footsteps. Uh, what is the thought in political economy? What is the overall conception of the economic liberation of the community? Not just um, liberation from oppression of a religion and caste, but beyond that, is there a well-defined political economic thought, or it still needs to be worked out?
No, that's a very useful question. I would say not yet. Uh, Ambedkar had some economic ideas uh, based on the 30s, 40s context of the world, because that was a world which socialism
We've lost your voice because of the
appeared
network.
to many as inevitable and so on. And democracy was
Professor,
on shaky ground because of
Professor,
the
Professor, can you hear me? Pardon me.
German and Italian Nazi and fascist uh, forces as well, and the World War. Yeah. No, I was saying
So we could hear only the first sentence that you spoke, and then the
hello.
network lost.
Yeah, Professor,
Sorry.
pardon me. We could only hear the first and second
No, no,
sentence
no. I'll
of
repeat.
whatever you
I'll
said.
repeat. I'll
Yeah,
repeat. There
yeah,
was a
please.
disconnect
Thank you.
here.
Thank you.
Now, what I
Yeah,
was saying
thanks a lot.
was there is no concrete Ambedkarite economic thought as of now. That is, I am sure. The reason was that Ambedkar himself had some economic ideas formulated in 30s and 40s, but that 30s and 40s and 50s were basically the times of world crisis. There was socialist upcoming, and then communist movements all over. There were world wars. Fascism and Nazism was attacking democracy and so on. Then he formulated some ideas, but as things went on, if you see Bahujan Samaj Party,
So I
when
just have a
it
request.
came to power, first when Kanshiram was alive, then after that, did they implement?
Professor, we seem to have lost you. Can you hear us? Hello, Professor.
So I just have a request to the mods. Maybe later they can ask Professor Saab if he can point towards a current thinker who's probably trying to grapple with this and who's probably trying to develop this, and we could perhaps invite that thinker to hold forth on this. Thank you so much.
Sure, Jitendra, we'll pass on the question to Professor. But for right now, Professor, can you hear us? There seems to be a network glitch from Professor's end. Um, just a moment. Professor, can you hear us now? Manishji, can you please take over? Give me some time.
Yes. Probably he's on mute.
No, this is Manishji. This is because of the because he's lost the network connection. So the mic automatically goes on mute if it's for long.
Goodbye.
Yeah. So Alexis is talking to him. Yeah.
Hi. So, the Wi-Fi connection is weak. It's being connected to a newer network, which is strong. So, just 2 minutes, and Professor will be back.
Okay, thank you. Probably we are almost done, and we are left with hardly one or two more questions. So,
Yes, I believe he was discussing the Uttar Pradesh thing, which I asked in my question, and while answering to Jitenji, and that would be good if he. Yes,
Hello.
Professor, we can hear you
yes,
now.
sir. Yes, Professor.
See, what I was saying was, you are right that there is no Ambedkarite economic thought, ideology as an alternative to the existing what Congress has put in place and so on. Because at Ambedkar's time, he formulated some ideas of economic thought through state socialism and heavy industry building and so on. But that was a time, when the whole world was in crisis. Socialist revolutions were taking place. Fascism and Nazism were waging world war. Democracy was in difficult times. So later on, the Nehruvian economic policies came in and they continued. Now, later, when Kanshiram formed बहुjan Samaj Party, he came to power when he was alive. Then Mayawati came to power. They claimed that they are pure Ambedkarites. But there is no alternative economic thought to them also. So, unlike communists, even the BJP RSS today is following most Congress. So I would say that as of now, there is no Ambedkarite alternative economic policy beyond the question of abolition of caste, reservations, and idea of democracy, spiritual democracy, and social democracy. How to build a new economic model in the given democratic system? No Ambedkarite has so far evolved any thought process. That is true.
And so, just very quickly, is there any contemporary scholar, thinker, Ambedkarite who is working in that direction?
Hello? Hello?
Jitenji,
Yes,
if you can
Professor, we
repeat
can
your
hear you.
question.
Can
We
you
can
hear
hear
me? Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you can,
Yeah,
you can.
yeah, I'll take one more question and then we'll close, okay?
Sure,
Sir,
Professor.
I had a quick follow-up. Do you know of any scholar, academician, thinker, or contemporary Ambedkarite who's perhaps dealing with the economic issue, who could be invited to the
No,
series?
right now I know only, Thorat, who was writing something on economic issues, mainly around land question, wage question, caste economics. But that is only inequality based analysis and how to evolve a policy around agricultural labor, land distribution, and reservation question, and so on. But I would say all that is not uh, building up a new system of economic thought. For example, we have globally a democratic economic thought system where inequality is bound to be there, but you reduce the inequality as production increases, time passes. The other one is the socialist model, which failed. Now, socialist model doesn't exist in any meaningful way in any one of the countries in the world. So, for me, democracy and egalitarian economy are the only possible ways but I have to yet come across any serious economist who is an anti-caste philosopher come economist who's working out new models of economic thought. As of now, I have not come across anybody.
Professor, I believe you were talking of Professor Sukhdev Thorat.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Manish.
Okay then. Can we
Thank you,
can
sir.
we stop
Yes,
here?
yes, yes. Yes, we are
Yes, yes,
stopping
yes,
this.
sir.
Mangesh, please
Sir,
take
we are,
over.
yeah, yeah. Sir, we are very thankful of you for spending almost 2.5 hours with us, and we are very delighted. Even the people from the clubhouse were eagerly waiting for this session. So thank you for your time, and hopefully in the next sessions we are also coming up with some Ambedkarites or some activists who can talk on this topic. So thank you, Professor, for coming here. Thank you, Alexis, for
Yeah. Thank you all for
connecting
inviting me.
with.
Thank you very much for your club group. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's an honor, sir. Thank you. So,
Thank you, Professor. Jai Bhim, Jai Phule.
Thanks a lot,
Hello.
Professor.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Jai
thank
Bhim,
you, sir.
Professor. Thanks a ton.
Jai
Thanks a
Bhim.
ton.
Jai Bhim. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mangesh, please close the room.
Okay. Thank you all of you for coming here, and patiently, listening to the session. We are closing the rooms on the count of three. 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.
This video was made possible by Creative Contents.